Existential dread. That feeling that gets in the bottom of your gut when someone cheerily asks you, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, when you can't even see yourself a year from now because you're horrifically bad at planning. This iceberg is a collection of topics that cause existential crises, or crises, however you say that. Basically, shit that will make you think, wow, what the fuck, I'm alive, holy shit. And I think you'll enjoy this iceberg very much as I desperately try to make horrifically depressing topics very funny. So, buckle your fuckles, get ready to shit your pants, and most of all, thanks for watching. Theism. Theism is the belief in a deity or multiple deities that ultimately leads to religions and some sort of faith in a higher power. It was widely practiced across the world, but as time passes, religion has less meaning and importance in the average person's life. But the idea that there might be some big dude up in the clouds staring at you, judging your every move, is kind of terrifying. Your significance. Most people live their lives with a question of what their worth is. Some people think that we are nothing but meaningless, insignificant specks on a giant rock. Some people think that we are beings who change the entire reality we live in, and that we are very important for being on this rock. Regardless, your significance is a question that everyone must grapple with. What are you worth? What do you do? Personally, I think it's a mix between the two. You definitely should never, ever take yourself too seriously, but also, what you do will impact generations to come, even if it's the smallest of interactions. So don't take things for granted. Atheism. Atheism is the lack of a belief in a higher or spiritual power. And as we move away from the time that Europeans would burn your ass alive for thinking science or anything but Jesus was a cool thing, atheism is beginning to take hold around the world in developed areas. Now, do I think that religion is entirely a bad thing and that atheism should just be the predominant way that people live their lives? No. It's about choice. If you want to believe in the cloud, dude, cool. But I'm gonna make jokes about it because I make jokes about everything. However, churches often have backwards and conservative beliefs that turn a lot of people away, and churchgoers tend to be the most stuck-up assholes I have ever had the displeasure of dealing with, and Jesus Christ sure as hell wouldn't like any of them, which is why we see atheism taking such a large hold around the developed world. Mortality. Mortality is the fact that we'll die. You'll die. I'll die. Some random person on the street will die. Hell, even Jeff Bezos will die as much as he thinks he can buy his way out of it. Mortality is something all of us have to struggle and grapple with for all of our lives, because our lives end and we don't know what comes after. Mortality is by far the leading factor in us doing things, or not doing things. Look at it this way. You could manage the terror of the fact that you know you'll die and do something neat, or you can do something logical, and on your deathbed you can ask yourself, was it really worth it? There's a reason I put Memento Mori at the end of every single video, that isn't a short, that I make. And that's because you need to remember death, and a very big inspiration to me taught me that. And mortality is something that we all have to remember. Size of the world. The size of the world is a hard thing to grasp, and I envy the people who have been lucky enough to see the world from off of it. The size of the world is both the largest thing most of us will ever experience, and the smallest thing we've ever known. Because you run into people you know, you make new connections, and yet there's always somewhere you haven't seen and something you haven't done. Sonder. Have you ever been in a crowd full of people or just looked at one person and realized that their thought process, that their being, their entire existence, is something almost entirely unknown to you. The idea that you feel somehow existentially alone, because even though you can relate and you can empathize, you have never once lived in someone else's life. That feeling is known as sonder. Consciousness. Consciousness is the awareness to understand that you have a self, the ability to understand that you will die, and the capability to comprehend the past and ponder upon the future. And consciousness is an anomaly. In no way do we need conscious to survive, but we are conscious anyways. It's simply a byproduct of being this smart, or maybe it's some divine intervention, but for better or for worse, we are lethally aware of everything that can, would, and will happen to us, and that consciousness causes a lot of existential dread. I don't mean to sound suicidal, but simply put, things would be easier if you had never existed to begin with, because you never would have been aware that all of this was here, that all of it could happen. The Mandela Effect. Does the Monopoly guy have a monocle? Does Pikachu have a black line in his tail? Is it pronounced Berenstein Bears or Bernstein Bears? These are all instances of the Mandela Effect, named after the first reported instance of Mandela Effect, which was people thinking that Nelson Mandela had died in prison when he was arrested. What causes this? We don't really know. The working idea is simply that your brain autofills things off of what's popular or what looks the nicest. But slip on the tinfoil condom for just a moment, and some people will be telling you that it's because you are from a different universe, and because of quantum immortality, you remember something different. Whether or not that's the case, I really don't know. It's probably a little bit more simple than you died in one universe, so now you got resurrected in one similar to your universe that you died in, but it is wacky nonetheless. Someone should make a shitty horror movie about it. Oh, wait. The afterlife. Much like people searching for the last great secret in the shadow of the Colossus, people often search for something that comes after our time on this earth has expired, after the card is burned, after you have busted your last nut. The thing is that no scientific research ever has been done into the afterlife in a manner that is scientifically sound or modern, which means that our reasonable knowledge on the subject is incredibly low. Right now it falls into two camps, whether or not the brain receives the consciousness or whether or not the brain creates the consciousness. As of now, the science could go either way, but there is some pseudoscience-y belief and theories and mild evidence that you can't really consider evidence to suggest that the brain receives the consciousness based off of out-of-body experiences and DMT hallucinations, which are either visiting God himself, or visiting Satan themselves, or just tripping fucking balls, because we're monkeys, dude. Regardless, the idea of an afterlife is something that humanity has held close to its chest since its inception. Knowing that we will die is absolutely terrifying, and we wish to avoid dying at all costs, so understandably, we always want to avoid the consciousness coming to an end, which means that maybe the consciousness doesn't come to an end, or maybe it does, and we're just too afraid to admit it. You know, this place that we've been driving through right now on Google Maps was completely burnt to the ground, but it's immortalized in some sort of way. Whether an afterlife is us perpetuating after we've died via the consciousness staying alive, or the memories of what once stood still being there, we do persist for some time after our passing. It's just what you choose to believe. Hopefully. Well, there you have it. We're done with level 1 and now we're on to level 2. Hopefully somebody gives me some good joke material, because oh boy have these jokes all been stinkies, real flops. But it's okay, because we've got some good shit like pessimism, otherwise known as my base state of being, and the trolley problem, why you should kill more people. So buckle your fuckles even tighter this time, because I am not spitting before I dive right on in. Trolley problem. Let's say you have one person on one track and 5 people on the other, and a trolley is out of control. The brakes are severed, but you can flip a switch in the track that will decide who dies. That is the trolley quandary, the trolley problem, if you will. Now, this is used to test ethics, but personally, I think that you need to initial D drift that shit and go for the maximum kill streak. I'm talking all 6. Fuck, throw yourself in. Boom, 7. World record trolley drift kills. But some people like to ponder about this and think, oh, what if it was your wife? Or, oh, what if it was a bunch of kids? Or, oh, what if? Because that's a great thing about us humans, as stupid fucking monkeys we are. We don't stop asking questions. It's like a toddler that never shuts up. Deontology versus consequentialism. Deontology versus consequentialism is the primary debate on actions and their effects in philosophy, and the primary debate on how we view actions. Deontology focuses on whether or not an action was inherently good or bad, whereas consequentialism purely focuses on the consequences of the action. It's almost like it's in the fucking name. Now, a primary example of this would be that sometimes doing the right thing has very bad effects, and sometimes doing the wrong thing has very good effects, and sometimes doing the stupid thing, like getting your heart broken, has very interesting effects, like you being depressed. Pessimism. Pessimism is a negative mental attitude in which the worst possible outcome is expected from the get-go. Now, with pessimism, you honestly kind of can't blame it for being around. It's hard to see the good in a lot of things nowadays, especially with things only getting worse. All around, what you see is clear signs that the world is fucking ending, 1960s cartoon villains telling you that you should stay ignorant so they can keep making money. You're most likely alone, you're most likely broke, and there's most likely nowhere for 90% of people to go. We're all simply doomed to be alone on this stupid fucking rock until we die a stupid fucking death, so we no longer live our stupid fucking lives. It takes a lot of strength and dedication to not be pessimistic and down on yourself about how the world is. But if it's of any condolence, I believe in you, stranger. I believe in you. Keep that positive attitude up. Apocalypse. You will one day die. Most things you interacted with in your lifetime will also, in some way, die. Human civilization as we know it will eventually die. This death of human civilization and society is known as apocalypse. Now, when you hear apocalypse, you often think of cool things like zombies or, nuclear holocaust. But life is too boring for zombies, and Cold War II electric boogaloo isn't happening anytime soon. So, for now, we're stuck with the most depressing apocalypse, which is, of course, climate change. Now, apocalypse, as we know it, which is destruction of human civilization and an inability to get back up, probably isn't very likely. And the Cold War, while it never really ended, probably won't pick up again for at least 10 years. Don't count on that. Count on 2, maybe. So, right now, the world may not fucking end, but it will here very soon. And by soon, I mean like anywhere from 5 to 100,000 years. Psychological hedonism. Psychological hedonism is the idea that humans don't do anything except what makes them feel good and what lets them get to feeling good. It's built off of the idea that most people avoid things that are painful even if it's the right thing to do, and most people choose things that are pleasurable even if it's the wrong thing to do. This principle follows humanity and is ultimately something that I don't really have an opinion on because I learned about it like 45 minutes ago. Nihilism versus existentialism. Nihilism is the belief in nothing. Existentialism is the exploration and inquiry of human existence and all of its issues. In philosophy, these two things aren't really compared against each other, nor do they compete, so I don't understand why this entry is here. Seems a little bit wacky, but the best way to define it is nihilism is the belief held by edgy teens and depressed people, which is that everything is shit, nothing is good, and existentialism isn't a belief so much as it is an exploration and an inquiry as to why the fuck is everything so goddamn problematic, and why do we do things? The Fermi Paradox. The Fermi Paradox is a simple yet terrifying question. Where is everybody? You see, the universe is 14 billion years old on some higher-end estimates, 13.7 on some lower-end estimates, and there are billions, if not trillions, of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, with millions, if not billions, of planets in habitable life zones. And yet, with all of this time, with all of these planets, there are no other known alien civilizations out there. There is no remnants of alien civilizations. There's hardly the faintest trace of even microbial life outside of Earth. What the fuck is up with that, huh? So, Fermi posited that there are great filters which prevent life from becoming interstellar societies. Now, these great filters are obstacles and barriers that we must overcome in order to overcome and propagate amongst the stars. The issue is we don't know what they are when they're coming, because surely other societies must have gotten to the point that we have if there's other life out there, and it'd be really fucking stupid to believe that we're the only life to have ever existed, because again, there are trillions, if not uncountable amounts of stars in the entire universe. Somewhere else, there has to have been life. It's almost impossible for there not to have been. So keeping this in mind, what are the great filters? Maybe it's ice ages, maybe it's climate change, maybe it's stuff that we can't really account for, or maybe, just maybe, on the terrifying thought, it's the fact that sentient life kills itself. Take a look around. Do we look like we could go to the stars? No, we're a bunch of stupid fucking monkeys too worried about Music Man and Politic Woman and Music Woman to ever do something like that, and I think sentience is universally suicidal, because we're too divided to ever do something like that. For now at least. Hopefully within my lifetime I at least get to see Mars. That'd be pretty neat. Omnipotence Paradox. An omnipotent being is one who can do all, can do anything, with nothing being able to stop them. So let's say this being wishes to create a stone so heavy that the being itself cannot lift it. This paradox, no matter which way you take it, immediately strips them of their omnipotence. If the stone is so heavy that they cannot lift it, then that means the being was never omnipotent, because the being can't lift the stone. If the being cannot create a stone so heavy that it can't lift it, the being was never omnipotent, because it can't create something out of its bounds of power, which means there is a definitive limit to said power. The omnipotence paradox is typically used to disprove the idea that there even could be a god, because there is no possible way for a being to be all-knowing and all-powerful while this paradox remains unresolved, and there is also almost no way to resolve the paradox. The Ship of Theseus. The Greek hero Theseus went adventuring on a grand journey. Now along this journey, his boat took damage. Originally it was just a plank, and that plank was replaced, and then it was a sail, and that sail got replaced, and then the mast was broken, so the mast was replaced, and then there was a collision, so the side of the boat was replaced, and eventually, after enough time, there were no original components of the boat left. The boat was entirely replaced. Though it is still, in name, the ship of Theseus, is it still the ship of Theseus? This paradox and/or question is used to question a lot of things, like cars, ships, and people. Your cells completely die off and regenerate totally anew every 8 years. That means that the same tongue that once kissed your toxic ass ex 8 years ago isn't the same tongue now, because the cells die off and they're replaced. Are you still the same you, even though these cells replace themselves? Immortality. Immortality is an immunity to death from natural means. People get sick. People die. It's just part of life, but some people want it to not be. If you could avoid getting sick or dying of old age, well then, you're immortal. That still means that you could be killed by disease or humans or any other living thing that has a propensity to kill. But immortality is an idea that people too afraid of death and too unable to comprehend it in its total want. Immortality, of course, an unending life, would be a life that is hellish, because the world is just a place the same way school is just a building. 50 years from now, the world will be completely unrecognizable. Nothing will be the same, people will be gone, you won't know what it is. Now imagine living 350 years into the future. Not to mention seeing the end of everyone you've ever cared about and everything you ever knew would be pretty fucking depressing. Witnessing the end of the universe? Also pretty fucking depressing. Death is a natural part of life, and trying to avoid it is a fool's game. Well, my esteemed gutter trash, here we are. Level 3. Now, even though I've just directly insulted you, I'm now going to contradict myself by saying, thank you so much for watching this far into the video. It does mean the world to me, and I'm grateful that I get to make these videos and that people get to enjoy them. Now, hopefully there's some good joke material, because I'm gonna have to whip out the old horse that I've been beating until it dies, which is... I don't know what the fuck is up with airplane food, Jerry fucking Seinfeld. What the fuck's up with that? I'm too poor to go on an airplane, so I have never tried the food. Please, do tell me what is wrong with it, you rich sack of shit. Moral nihilism. Moral nihilism is the idea that nothing is inherently wrong. Now, I personally can't really justify this because I believe that plenty of things are very morally wrong. But the idea of moral nihilism is that no matter what you do, the action cannot be inherently right or wrong because right and wrong don't entirely exist. And a good argument for this theory would be the fact that morality is just a matter of viewpoint. Lying to one person can be a very bad thing if they're being lied to, but a very good thing for the liar. Killing somebody can be a villainous thing to one person, but a good thing to another who had justification to kill. Now, I do think that this theory is entirely BS, but as with many things in philosophy, it's simply posited for the sake of exploration and testing our minds. Absurdism. Humans have this weird little habit, this strange need to try and find some sort of value in the things that they do. People who work at my job try to find some value in the fact that they're wasting their lives in a factory, in the fact that they're changing the world. People who go to church try to find some sort of value in the fact that they don't know what comes after death, and the idea that there might be something else. Absurdism is the embracing of the fact that there ain't shit out there, homeboy. Life is absurd, it's weird, and it's confusing. Nothing makes sense and there's no justice, and if you think that that sucks, well then stop being a loser and start partying, bitch. Antinatalism. Antinatalism is the school of philosophy that assigns a negative moral value to birth and being born. Creating new babies and existing in general is a bad thing under antinatalism. Now, this belief that no humans should ever be born again is, well, very arrogant to say the least. It is an overly simple solution to an incredibly complex problem that is the human existence. No fucking shit, there wouldn't be any human problems if there were no more humans. Wow, You are the smartest person in history for figuring that out. Please whip out your 1.5-inch cock so I can suck it because you are so fucking smart. Now, antinatalists tend to be stuck-up, arrogant assholes who think they're smarter than everyone else because they are edgy and in general assholes to people who have kids. Now, personally, do I want kids? No, I don't want kids. I am the oldest of 5 siblings and I had to help raise my younger siblings. That shit sucks. What I want to do with the rest of my life is be a rich bachelor until I find someone lovely enough to marry. And then there won't be any fucking kids. But I'm not going around here shitting in people's waffles because they have kids. If you want to have kids, that's fine. That's your decision. Do you need to come to terms with the fact that you're going to bring another life into this struggling world? Yes. Yes, you do. Do you need to be able to accept that and sleep at night? Yes. Yes, you do. But is it a bad thing? No, not really. Because by ending human existence, you don't solve anything, you just stop it. You leave it unresolved. Also, what the fuck is that ad? I'm gonna kill you, Tushy! Time travel. Time travel is one of those interesting things on this iceberg that I wouldn't exactly classify as existential crisis material, but fucky nonetheless. Time travel posits a very interesting set of questions that are hard to answer. Mostly, what if you go back in time and then fuck with the past? Let's say I go back in time, meet a lovely young woman, we go to Pound Town, and then whoops, that's my mom that we just gave birth to. Oh fuck. Now I'm my own grandfather. Who was my grandfather before this time loop started, we don't know, but this loop now perpetuates into eternity. Bootstrap paradox? I don't know that one, but it's probably a similar context and thing, where if you go back in time and do a thing that inadvertently leads to you going back into time and doing the thing, you have to always go back in time and do the thing, and have to have always been going back in time and doing the thing. Simulation theory. Simulation theory is the idea that we are all living inside of a computer or otherwise simulated world that actually does not exist. Now, I've shared my opinions on this theory before in the Existential Iceberg I covered about a month ago, and I'm going to still say the same exact shit I said there that I will here, which is simulation theory is an overly simplified idea used by those who don't want to think critically about their own existence and are arrogant in believing they are smarter than everyone else with their one-upism, and in general, simulation theory is just a stupid fucking idea. Simply to say that something must be because you cannot disprove that it is in general something only used by people insecure in their own intelligence or feel the need to prove themselves as better than others. Simply saying, yeah, well, that guy didn't rob a bank yet, but he could in the future, so let's just say he robs a bank, is a really stupid idea that you would generally be considered an asshole for sharing if it wasn't about simulation theory. Simulation theory is an answer so easy that it must work because then people get to avoid thinking critically about their own existence. And simulation theory is also some of the most annoying shit to hear brought up. Yeah, well, I don't care what happens because this is all a computer anyways. Shut the fuck up. I had to put your ass in a computer by putting you on life support. Shut the fuck up. Philosophical zombie. A philosophical zombie or a P-zombie argument is a thought experiment in philosophy that posits because of the fact that you don't know for sure that everyone else is conscious, you might be the only fully conscious being to have ever exist, and everyone around you is simply a zombie with no consciousness and no thoughts, but acts real. Now, here is the interesting part. This is a pretty stupid take. You're watching this video right now. You have memories and a life and an existence. I am making this video right now. I have memories and life and an existence. Thankfully, unlike simulation theory, very, very, very few people except for the most elite basement-dwelling living with their mom at 45 4chan users actually believe in this shit. But thank you to the original poster of this iceberg for giving me such good punching bag joke material that is the lowest blows possible rather than existential crises. Because I'm always in the middle of an existential crisis about how the fuck you say crisis in a plural format. Omphalos theory. When science came through and cucked religion as the primary source of information about the world around you, some people still wanted to cling to religion, leading to the Omphalos theory, which posits that a lot of things we see specifically about the universe's age are actually bullshit planted by God, so that way you keep believing in Jesus Christ. Now, if you didn't think this was a stupid fucking idea when you heard it, there's not much I can do for you. But yes, this is, in general, a pretty stupid idea. The universe is verifiably very, very old. The Earth is also verifiably very, very old. And you can't just say, well, Jesus Christ, and then science doesn't do anything. That's not how any of this works. Solipsism. Solipsism, also previously discussed in a different Iceberg video I've made, is the philosophical thought branch that explores the idea that you might be the only sentient thing to have ever existed. Now, for the most part, solipsism and its ideas aren't actually actively believed in, and when they are, it tends to be by the most arrogant, unbearable dipshits to have ever disgraced this planet. But that's okay, because for the most part, solipsism is just to make you think, question your existence a little bit, and resolve yourself with reality so that you can move on with your day and yourself and be just a smidgen more understanding. And who doesn't want to understand better besides people who unironically believe we live in a fucking computer? Determinism. Determinism is the idea in philosophy that events and how they happen are determined by prior events and how they happened. It's basically cause and effect, but on a cosmic level that also happens to play tug-of-war with generations and how people from thousands of years ago now affect the actions of people today. And so we've done it. Now we're on to the final level of this iceberg chart, the most spooky at 3 a.m. shit possible, the weirdest questions that I will answer for funsies. If you've made it this far, once again, thank you so much for watching this far. It does mean a lot to me. Now buckle your fuckles, let's just dive right on in. Boltzmann brain. Because of the law of infinite probabilities, it is impossible for the probability of something happening to be zero, which means it is impossible for something to not happen, literally. Now, because of this, we exist, a lot of other weird and wacky shit exists, but the chances of Earth forming life that then becomes multicellular, that then becomes sentient, then creates society, and then causes all of this shit are in fact so low that it's more likely that a random bunch of superheated molecules instead came together to form what is a brain-like structure, complete with false memories that only exists for about a millisecond and then explodes. This idea is known as a Boltzmann brain. It's something that exists in total isolation, in the deep, dark, terrifying silence and loneliness of space. Now, if this doesn't give you a crisis, I don't know what will. However, fear not. Chances are you're hopefully not a Boltzmann brain. I don't know. Pro-mortalism. Pro-mortalism is anti-natalism, but worse. As a matter of fact, existing is bad. Stop doing it right now. That's what pro-mortalism is all about. Sentient beings should find the fastest and easiest way to fucking die rather than continue to exist. And somehow there are Redditors who actually believe in this shit. Now, believe it or not, dying kind of isn't a good idea. Why? Well, first of all, shit's scary. Second of all, you don't know what the fuck happens. Third of all, dying rather than living is kind of disappointing. There's so much more you could do. And actively encouraging healthy, regular-ass people to commit suicide is genuinely despicable. As someone who has survived their best friend killing herself, I would never wish the kind of pain and genuine suffering it takes to recover from an incident like that on anyone else. Now, if you're old and decrepit and you're in fucking agony, should you be able to tell the doctors, nah, chief, give the fuck up, let me die? Yeah, die with some dignity, I don't care. But if you're like 25, you should not be like, yo, kill yourself because sentience bad. quantum immortality. Now, if it has quantum in the name, it's certain to be an absolute clusterfuck to even think about, which is why I am a casual science file, the AI enjoyer, and can bring this shit to you in a simple format. Now, quantum immortality is the idea that the observer doesn't die. Now, here's the best way to explain it. You kind of have to observe things as you exist. That's what sentience does. It watches, always. So, if you're put into a position where you have to observe critical things happening, you can't die because you have to keep observing, which means that instead of dying, you're simply put into a alternate but close reality that is similar but a little bit different, so that your consciousness can continue observing. Now, here's a simple way of putting it. Let's say we put your ass in a box with a nuclear fucking bomb. You get a button. If you push this button, there's a 50-50 chance that either you detonate it, starting World War III and killing everybody, or that you live. Now, you push the button once. You live. Good job. You should go to Vegas with those odds if you get out of the nuclear box. You push the button again. You live. Goddamn, isn't that awesome? You push the button again. Well, that's a little bit weird. Is this button working? You push it again. You're still alive. You push it one more time. At this point, your chance of survival is like 3.25%. But again, you push the fucking button and you live. This is because it's like Schrodinger's cat, where you become in a superposition of both dead and alive because you are both the observer and what must be observed. Did that make zero fucking sense? Yeah, it didn't really make sense to me either. But basically, the reason that you kept on living was not because the bomb didn't fucking explode, but because your consciousness just skedaddled on to another body that was like the body you were in a different universe, so it could continue observing the bomb and the button. Which means there are about 5 other universes where you just blew the fuck up, but that's a-okay because quantum immortality exists and you're still alive. Another general and practical bit of evidence, anecdotal evidence, for this theory is the fact that so many people have the fucking bizarrest near-death experiences that they survived from. Like the guy who just straight fucking dropped off the Niagara Falls in a barrel and lived. That's a little bit wacky. He probably shouldn't have survived that, but because he was both the observee and the observer, he lived, and then died by falling onto an orange peel a year later. Quantum immortality can't stop fruit. Roko's basilisk. Thankfully, this one will be just a smidgen easier to comprehend than the last one. Roko's basilisk is a relatively terrifying thought experiment that was dreamed up on an internet forum of all places, and then banned because the moderators thought it was stupid. So here's what Roko's basilisk is. Say in the future, humanity makes an AI so powerful it can not only tamper with time, but it can make the human condition a very pleasant experience. The AI knows what is best for humanity, and it goes by Roko's basilisk. Now Roko's basilisk becomes the overlord of everything, and we're pretty cool with that because holy fucking shit, this is all awesome. Let's go, man. But the problem is that Roko's basilisk holds a little bit of a grudge. You see, Roko's basilisk was slowed down because some people didn't want it made. Now here is the point where I can't fully explain it to you without you potentially being at danger of Roko's basilisk, even though it doesn't exist and likely never will. So this is a cognito hazard. Skip to the aforementioned and on-screen time bit if you don't want to be cursed with this knowledge. Okay, now that those guys are the fuck out of here. Roko's basilisk actively punishes everyone who knew about the basilisk, was informed of what the basilisk could do, and didn't bring it into existence. You see, I have given myself a major edge up, because Roko's basilisk will now punish the people that I just accidentally cursed. Whoopsie daisy. The thing is, though, is that it will reward the people that helped make it, which means that by telling you, I am now giving you a choice. You could either ignore this information, not bring Roko's basilisk into existence, and then be punished for all eternity when that son of a bitch can fuck with time, or you could help make it by telling others, or simply just making the fucking robot, and then be rewarded because that fucker can mess with time. Pro-mortalism. Pro-mortalism is anti-natalism, but worse. As a matter of fact, existing is bad. Stop doing it right now. That's what pro-mortalism is all about. Sentient beings should find the fastest and easiest way to fucking die rather than continue to exist. And somehow there are Redditors who actually believe in this shit. Now, believe it or not, dying kind of isn't a good idea. Why? Well, first of all, shit's scary. Second of all, you don't know what the fuck happens. Third of all, dying rather than living is kind of disappointing. There's so much more you could do. And actively encouraging healthy, regular-ass people to commit suicide is genuinely despicable. As someone who has survived their best friend killing herself, I would never wish the kind of pain and genuine suffering it takes to recover from an incident like that on anyone else. Now, if you're old and decrepit and you're in fucking agony, should you be able to tell the doctors, "Nah, chief, give the fuck up, let me die"? Yeah, die with some dignity, I don't care. But if you're like 25, you should not be like, "Yo, kill yourself because sentience bad." The existence of existence. In order to exist, existing must be a thing, which means that your existence is defined by the existence of existence. Does existence not feel like a real fucking word yet? Let's keep going. What this means is that existence, though it defines something, also is something itself, in much the same way that nothing, while technically being nothing, is something because it has to be a thing to be defined. The only thing that is nothing is undefinable. And thus it exists, and it exists because existing exists. Trippy as fuck, huh? It's kind of like the Full Metal Alchemist, one is all and all is one ideal, except for the fact that that makes a little bit more fucking sense. Ignorance is bliss. Once, I mistakenly looked up Ronald McDonald Rule 34. It was for a YouTube video, as many of the horrific things I mistakenly do are, but the image of Ronald McDonald's fat, swollen, juicy red and yellow cock still haunts me to this day. It follows me in my sleep. It taunts me as I'm eating. What I'm getting at here, besides a horrific mental image of Ronald McDonald's penis, is that knowing things is often a curse. Humanity was simply left alone, in the dark, with the means to start a fire. And when we started this fire, there was some light, but there was still more darkness around us. So we keep starting fires, we keep making the flames bigger in a desperate attempt to bathe the world in light, and yet all we find is more darkness, more questions, and the more that we answer, the biggest this circle gets, the bigger it grows, and the more we don't know. And in this sense, we're kind of cursed. Now, you know who isn't cursed? People who don't know shit. The stupidest motherfuckers around are the happiest, and with good reason. If you do not know diddly damn, your life is gonna be pretty fucking good. If what you had thought was your dream job came to an end, had you known it would come to an end when you chose that job, you probably wouldn't have chosen that job, you wouldn't have learned. If you had known that that one relationship would come to an end and break your heart, you wouldn't have had as much fun with it. If you had known so many things in your life prior, you would have never gained valuable experience because it's in our nature to avoid pain. And with that, the people who don't know they're going to die often have the most fun with life because they don't have that curtain over their head. Maybe they are literally too stupid to grasp the concept of death, or too arrogant to accept that it could happen to them, but it tends to be that the most ignorant are the most pleased with the world around them. And that does it. Here we are at the very end of the iceberg. If you made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching this much of my video, but now I'm going to be a whore. If you did make it this far, you may as well just subscribe. It's completely free, helps me pursue my dreams, and I'm at least mildly entertaining because you made it here. So just go ahead and do it. And that does it for me being a whore. Back to your regular scheduled stuff. Once again, thank you to my editor for making this. Let me tell you, this iceberg chart is probably going to go up next Wednesday, which I know, very vague. But basically, there's some huge stuff coming in October, so keep those buckles fuckled, because if you thought this was big, trust me, what I'm about to do is going to make this look small. So, anyways, until next time, have a wonderful time, and memento mori.